A solitary boar sprinted through the shadowy depths of the jungle. The cause of its panicked flight was quite evident. A menacing insectoid navigated the trees with remarkable swiftness, relentlessly pursuing its quarry. In a flash, the creature lunged, abruptly ending the boar's life. This beast was formidable. Despite its considerable bulk, it possessed extraordinary agility. Its razor-sharp, sickle-like claws offered its victims no escape. However, there's always a larger predator in the food chain. This time, it encountered a genuinely formidable adversary, a band of hunters, resolved to eliminate it permanently. In the brief skirmish, the hunters achieved a decisive triumph. The once dominant monster now lay vanquished at the humans' feet. Countless spectators observed via their screens, elated by the Sky Knight squad's annihilation of the S-class giant, Mantis Lord. This victory marked a significant advancement for humankind. However, this wasn't precisely a realm of imagination. A silver-haired gentleman, clad in a white robe, adjusted his spectacles. He declared in a grave tone that the game's parameters had finally achieved equilibrium. As previously indicated, it was indeed a game. Nevertheless, things weren't as straightforward as they initially appeared. This massive game distinguished itself from the rest. Its primary and most significant distinction was its foundation in reality. It all commenced 2 decades prior. Dimensional gateways leading to alternate realities abruptly materialized across the globe. These realms were domains of fantasy, resembling something from a fantastical novel. They teemed with a variety of mythical beings and enchantments. These realms also possessed an alternative designation, the wilderness. Following investigation, it was discovered that despite its inherent perils, the wilderness couldn't engage with or establish a connection to the real world. Simply put, nothing could be transported from the portal into reality. This included enchanted objects or unique abilities acquired during expeditions. For an extended period, this remained an insurmountable obstacle until a Shinsho corporation acquired the wilderness rights. Utilizing their cutting-edge technology, they merged and transmuted various realms into an expansive, interactive experience. It was christened Survival in the Apocalypse. Numerous individuals became participants, engaging in collaborative gameplay. Upon entering the game and traversing the portal, one assumed the role of a knight. Their principal mission was to endure this formidable alternate reality. Though players lacked immortality and could perish in the wilderness, those weary of mundane existence sought novel encounters within the game. They displayed no fear of the creatures or the prospect of permanent demise. Present day, a majority of the global populace has already journeyed to alternate realities. Affluent individuals have even commissioned valiant souls to reside in these otherworldly domains. It's transcended mere entertainment. It's a genuine masterpiece, and Lin Tien, the central figure of our narrative, was among the architects of this magnum opus. However, not all approved of his endeavors. Upon entering the workplace, he was promptly confronted by a throng of adversaries converging upon our protagonist. Their ringleader thrust a document at him and testily inquired if he was responsible for altering the information and attributes of the mantis creature. This haughty individual was known as Lu Dong. He was a scion of one of the corporation's highest-ranking officials and also a formidable combatant within the game. He didn't require Lien's response. He was already certain that only Lien possessed the capability. His sole intention was to rebuke him for presuming to implement modifications without obtaining authorization from the administration. Our protagonist conceded that he hadn't consulted with his colleagues. However, he anticipated their rejection of his proposition. His actions were solely for the sake of equilibrium within the game. This balance had recently been significantly disrupted. Presently, the game was malfunctioning, deviating from his original vision. This could render the game uncontrollable and result in irreparable repercussions. Regardless of his pronouncements, his words failed to resonate with Liu Dong. Seizing our protagonist by his attire, he inquired with a resentful tone, questioning when he had acquired the power to impose his demands upon the corporation. He asserted that the organization had its own justifications for its conduct, and compliance was expected of him. Linton refused to readily acquiesce and become a mere instrument of the company. He held authority over and accountability for all in-game elements and had already modified the creature design specifications, along with their attributes. Should alterations be made, the repercussions could be unpredictable. Lu Daolong discerned that. He planned to remain steadfast until the very end. Thus, he shifted his approach. He declared that everything hinged on him, and he required no justifications. He demanded specific outcomes and nothing less. He then proclaimed that failure to deliver these results would result in immediate termination for everyone. This didn't sit well with his colleagues. As they too faced the prospect of dismissal, they promptly voiced their disapproval, having cautioned against unauthorized modifications without informing their supervisors. They felt he was acting as if he were in charge, and his issues were exacerbating their responsibilities. With everything now under his purview, Lu Daolong insinuated to Lington that if he was unwilling, he could simply tender his resignation. Our protagonist couldn't comprehend these individuals' motives. Their objective wasn't crafting a universally enjoyable game. This contradicted his fundamental beliefs. Thus, should he remain employed there? Suddenly, a voice disrupted his train of thought, and a gentle touch grazed his hand. The individual revealed herself to be a striking young woman named Luo Yu. She urged him to compose himself and refrain from rash actions. Observing her, our hero truly paused, abandoning the confrontation. Our protagonist faced a formidable predicament. Due to unforeseen events, he was saddled with a multi-million-dollar debt. His sole lifeline was this employment, allowing him to barely remain solvent. Were he to lose it, creditors would likely inflict a fatal beating, leaving him to perish on the streets. However, Lishan also grappled with another dilemma. Was continued employment at the company truly prudent? Uncertainty plagued him. He informed Lloyd Daolong that he required a period of reflection before reaching a decision. He didn't pressure our protagonist, but reminded him to recognize his position. His duty was to fulfill the company's expectations and refrain from overstepping his boundaries. That was their sole requirement of him. After some time, Lenanon was seated on a bench alongside Liao Yu. The young woman expressed her sincere gratitude for our hero's guidance. Due to his assistance, she now grasped the root of the issue. Our protagonist simply responded that her design was flawless. He merely offered a few observations. However, Luo Yu held a different perspective. After all, without his intervention, her employment would have been terminated long ago. She also harbored concern over his frequent outspokenness against the company. She feared it could result in unfavorable repercussions. It was common knowledge that the corporation frequently employed underhanded tactics to eliminate adversaries. Consequently, engaging in frequent disputes with them posed a significant risk. Linton couldn't deny the validity of her statement. He recognized that the executives would likely wanted him gone, so he responded that he'd handle it. Lu Yue beamed at his reply, knowing it was time for her to head back to the office. Lenonon's gaze lingered on her. She was the sole person at the company he could confide in. To him, Liu was a beacon of hope in his otherwise bleak existence. He couldn't bear the thought of her vanishing from his life. Noticing his intense stare, Liu inquired, "What's wrong?" Our protagonist abruptly rose and hurried towards her. He recognized the potential danger for himself, but he had to alert her. She needed to be aware. He anxiously and excitedly declared that imminent, significant shifts were coming for the company, perhaps even the world. Thus, she should exercise caution. Confused, Liu asked him to explain. Linton couldn't divulge more, yet he could still safeguard her. He vowed to do everything in his power to rectify things. Her response spoke volumes. With a radiant grin, she bid him farewell with a wave, assuring him of her belief in him. Regardless of his intentions, she also expressed her hope for his protection. The corporation was undoubtedly concealing an earth-shattering secret. It was a secret he had stumbled upon unintentionally. Nevertheless, a simple truth dawned upon him. Resigning from the company would be perilous, not solely due to the threat of creditors seeking retribution. Firstly, the company might grow suspicious and likely attempt to eliminate him. He found himself trapped in an inescapable predicament. To ensure his survival, thorough preparation was essential. Concurrently, the 76th Xinchuang Project Assembly was convening. Within the conference chamber, a senior leader promptly announced that the Red Division had ascertained the commencement of the jungle's expansion. This could signify only one outcome. The momentous occasion was imminent. The dilemma, however, was that the anticipated jungle overlord failed to materialize. Luo Dong, also in attendance at the gathering, stated that Lin Tian, the individual spearheading the game's creation, had consistently rebuffed their propositions. He couldn't help but speculate that this was due to Lin Tian having acquired certain knowledge. Another attendee corroborated his assertion, affirming with conviction that he possessed the jungle's enigma. Another participant promptly declared that, in that scenario, immediate elimination should have been enacted. It was a revelation capable of upending the world order. The uninitiated were perpetually forbidden from such knowledge. A company executive recognized our protagonist's moniker, identifying him as a remarkably gifted software developer. To secure his services for their enterprise, they resorted to extreme measures, plunging his family into profound debt. As it was originally Luo Daolong's scheme, the executive declared that Luo now bore the responsibility for resolution. It wouldn't pose a significant challenge. Their objective was simple: entice him into the wilderness and eliminate him. As usual, there was zero chance of discovery. This individual eagerly accepted the assignment. He had long awaited this chance. After some time, the forest resonated with the clamor of combat. Moments later, tranquility returned. Amidst the numerous fallen bodies stood Lin Tian. Gesturing towards his attire, Luda remarked that he hadn't anticipated someone of his stature exploiting his in-game advantages to cultivate such a divine appearance. Moreover, he hadn't foreseen his nightly contingent enduring such substantial casualties. He conceded that if not for Luo Yu, who prompted him to disclose their location, locating him would have proven exceedingly challenging. Luo Dalong was genuinely intrigued by when he commenced his preparations. He found it unbelievable that our protagonist had initially presumed their intention to eliminate him. Eventually, though, all of that was irrelevant now. A smug grin spread across Lu Dong's face. In a flash, blood erupted. A deceitful blade punctured Lin Tian's chest. Even if he possessed unmatched strength, it wouldn't alter the outcome. He never envisioned that his closest confidant would betray him. The culprit this time was Lu Oyue. When he called her name, her usual radiant smile was absent. Only icy indifference met his gaze. His powerless body crumpled to the earth. He acknowledged the ever-present danger, that his safeguards might crumble, leading to his demise. Nevertheless, perishing at the hands of his most cherished love was unimaginable. A decade prior, following an inquiry by Shenquan Technology, the wilderness was revealed to exist beyond the tangible world, and that humanity could coexist harmoniously with its inhabitants. However, the situation was far more complex than the corporation had portrayed. The reality was that the jungle was gradually, yet relentlessly, expanding its territory, and in approximately a decade, it would completely envelop the planet. This signified that in the foreseeable future, all of humanity would be compelled to enter the jungle and fight for survival. And our protagonist, Lin Tian, was among the masterminds behind this elaborate game. He bore the responsibility of converting the jungle into a habitable and sustainable environment for humankind. Despite the upper echelon's attempts to conceal the truth, as the individual in command, he was inevitably privy to their scheme. Our hero understood the precarious position of those possessing forbidden knowledge. Their survival was often short-lived. He had anticipated this and prepared accordingly. He even triumphantly managed to outmaneuver and vanquish them. Events unfolded precisely as he had meticulously orchestrated. With a single critical exception, the individual he implicitly trusted had betrayed him. Turning to Lin Tian, she inquired, "Do you still remain oblivious to the fact that your entire existence has been predetermined from the very outset?" From his parents' demise to the massive corporate debt he shouldered, the root cause of all this stemmed from his exceptional aptitude for game development. He was doomed from the outset. Even if the corporation's scheme crumbled, she would still act as the ultimate guarantor. And so she did, yet Lloyd's derision persisted. She snidely remarked on her deep regret that such brilliance would be squandered. Presently, however, our protagonist was utterly unconcerned. "So it was you," was all he could utter. The sting of treachery remained potent. Luo Dewang wouldn't tarry. He informed Liyue that her explanation was pointless. Their current assignment was simply his elimination. Yet seemingly, they needn't even lift a finger. A smug grin spread across Luo Dewang's face. They merely needed to abandon him. After all, he believed, perishing at the hands of his own creations was a cruel twist of fate. Lishan was left to be ripped apart by the horrifying beasts. They vanished into the gateway. Abandoned and alone, our protagonist braced for death. Resistance was futile in his weakened state. Any action would be pointless. It appeared his journey had reached its end. But in a fleeting moment, A system notification materialized within his fading awareness. The system registered an imminent threat to the host's survival. Recognizing the dire situation, it instantly initiated the Jungle Protocol. The Jungle Lord persona immediately began to download. The process completed successfully. An instant later, our hero was reborn, embodying his new identity. He was now a level 1 alien mantis. The system promptly indicated one active ability, Flash, and a passive ability, Jungle Instinct, also at level 1. This was a promising start, and there was more to come. Moments later, a brilliant ray of light illuminated a clearing. Nestled deep within the jungle's heart, Lyndon could finally open his eyes and survey his surroundings. The mere fact that he could see was evidence of his success. The world before him appeared subtly altered. The explanation was straightforward. The system window had previously displayed the reason. He was no longer human. Our protagonist, however, considered this secondary. Firstly, he was elated by his successful deception of the company's leadership. They believed his armor was his greatest strength, but they were sorely mistaken. His transformation was his true ace in the hole. Following the jungle's emergence, exploration commenced immediately. It was discovered that the jungle had once been the domain of a formidable entity, the Jungle Lord. Though he had vanished long ago, he had never been seen again. Much lore surrounded him. Nearly every inscription illustrated the extent of his notoriety among contemporary civilizations. Scholars also ascertained that when master-level beings perished in the wilderness, their abilities persisted in some ethereal form. In essence, the spirit of the former jungle's sovereign endured in a spectral manner, awaiting an opportune moment for resurrection. Given its potency, it could represent a significant menace to their nascent game. Recognizing this, Liu Dong promptly offered to seek a resolution. His goal was to locate and neutralize the latent peril swiftly. With utmost haste, Lin Tian, a fellow researcher, stated their current lack of insight regarding this entity. He pledged to report any findings immediately. He conveyed this assurance to the corporation. Those were his precise words to the company. However, this was merely a facade for his true escape strategy that he had reserved exclusively for his own use. The might of the jungle's sovereign, the very power they had relentlessly pursued for so long, now belonged to him. Nevertheless, there existed another force that rivaled and enhanced this power. It was the essence of the jungle itself. This was the key to unlocking his true potential. In a mere instant, his inaugural assignment materialized before him: survival. His mere presence had aroused the jungle creature's notice, and now he found himself the target of their hunt. Our protagonist's objective was rather straightforward. He simply needed to endure. The compensation offered was 1,000 jungle points. Lishan frequently embarked on hunting expeditions in the jungle. Currently, he found himself amidst the shadowy depths of the forest. This indicated that the denizens of this area were spectral wolves, and they had already arrived. In the ensuing moment, precisely as our hero had foreseen, a ferocious wolf lunged at him. Despite the abruptness and swiftness of the assault, our protagonist effortlessly evaded the attack. This was all due to his innate ability, Jungle Instinct. Because of it, Linton could perceive hostile intent and react reflexively. He'd faced spectral wolves numerous times. These were weak, low-ranking creatures, typically inhabiting the jungle's shadowy depths. They possessed ordinary fighting prowess and, like their natural counterparts, preferred to hunt as a group. Their primary strength lay in their numbers. Luckily, for our hero, this was inconsequential, since all the wolves were feeble. Moreover, his passive skill wasn't his sole weapon. His greatest asset was the offensive maneuver, Flash. This ability granted him extraordinary swiftness and allowed him to strike his foe despite his remarkable velocity. Linton wielded it with complete mastery, never fearing a collision. This was because of his inherent ability, Jungle Instinct. Executed it flawlessly, granting him unrestricted movement. The synergy between these two abilities was truly remarkable and functioned impeccably. But these weren't the sole advantages our protagonist possessed. He was a software engineer, which implied extensive knowledge of the game's intricacies and its underlying mechanisms. Having endured over a year in the wilderness, he was familiar with every minute detail. As one of the wolves charged towards him, he remained utterly unfazed. After all, he understood the wolf's destiny was predetermined. The instant it trod upon an inconspicuous bloom, this seemingly harmless flower was, in fact, a carnivorous plant, typically dormant. Once triggered, escape was virtually impossible, capitalizing on the flowers. Preoccupation with the wolf, as it voraciously consumed it. Lin Tin effortlessly eliminated them both. Minimal exertion, maximum outcome. His knowledge had enabled him to accomplish this much. However, he still had other wolves to contend with. Dispatching the remaining wolves proved to be no trouble. Our protagonist noticed his stamina was nearly exhausted. Fortunately, by defeating the monsters, he had advanced to level 3. Despite feeling slightly fatigued, he felt more at peace in the wilderness than among humans. Lost in thought, he failed to realize the system hadn't yet notified him of the mission's completion. This could only signify one possibility. The danger remained present. In that instant, Lishan recognized his carelessness and complacency. Simultaneously, his jungle instinct skill triggered an alert, forewarning him of imminent peril. It turned out another wolf was lying in wait, biding its time for a perfect ambush. Indeed, it was a clever tactic. This allowed the phantom wolf to catch even a seasoned veteran off guard, like our protagonist, completely unaware. However, the situation was far more dire for Lin Tian. He could repel a level 1 wolf, similar to those he'd previously encountered. But the issue was this time, he faced a spectral alpha wolf, a formidable level 6 beast. Nevertheless, it was unfair to entirely fault Lin Tian for his lack of vigilance. The likelihood of a low-level monster, especially an alpha, appearing was less than 1%. He never anticipated encountering such a creature. Despite being a reincarnated jungle sovereign, he was currently only level 1. The disparity between their levels was immense, so much so that he felt the pressure just from its proximity. Lin Tian was stunned, desperately trying to formulate a plan, but his adversary gave him no time to react. In a split second, it lunged towards our hero, attempting to obliterate the colossal beetle with a single chomp. Our protagonist narrowly evaded the attack. Nevertheless, his dwindling stamina posed the most significant challenge. The predicament deteriorated with each passing moment. The Wolf Lord relentlessly pressed its assault. Lin Tian had no recourse but to evade, but his depleted energy reserves were taking their toll. After just a handful of these onslaughts, the spectral Wolf Lord succeeded in wounding him, gritting his teeth against the agony. Our hero, exasperatedly, acknowledged the spectral Wolf Lord's remarkable swiftness and power. In his former life, dispatching such an adversary would have been trivial. But now, even a level 6 creature presented a formidable obstacle. This was merely a temporary setback. He required time to recuperate and regain his strength. However, the wolf offered no respite, and attempting to parry its blows with bare hands was sheer folly. The circumstances appeared dire. To put it mildly, Lishan realized with dread that this was no laughing matter, and he would certainly perish if he remained passive. This realization was genuinely terrifying. However, his demise was not imminent. He had endured all the corporation's attempts on his life. He had outwitted them and been reborn as a ruler of the wilderness. Surrendering and perishing after achieving so much seemed an excessively tragic conclusion. Fortunately, a dismal ending was averted. He possessed sufficient recollections and impetus to persevere. The company wasn't his primary source of ire. He had anticipated their lethal intentions from the outset. Currently, our protagonist harbored the most intense animosity towards a single individual, the individual he had guided and instructed during his tenure at the company. Luo Yu had frequently sought his assistance, and he had never declined her requests. He consistently provided patient responses, even to her most inane and self-evident inquiries. He elucidated for her that the jungle was dissimilar to the games they had previously developed. The framework upon which the game was constructed needed to accommodate a wider array of possibilities, instead of relying on a fixed set of rules. The explanation for this was rather straightforward. The jungle possessed a life of its own. Being betrayed by his most trusted confidant was agonizing. It was this anguish and resentment that fueled his desire to survive. As he'd previously stated, the jungle was indeed dynamic, making it impossible to foresee every potential event. His immediate priority was survival at any cost. This was the sole path to vengeance. In a flash, the appendages on his back commenced quivering. Escape was his only recourse. Thus, Linton unhesitatingly extended his wings, which served a purely utilitarian purpose. Abruptly, he pivoted, utilizing his wings for enhanced velocity and agility. He fled with his remaining energy. Within moments, he had traversed dozens of meters and appeared to effortlessly outdistance the phantom wolf. My lord, was victory truly that effortless? It may have initially appeared so, but the reality was quite different. Though the wolf was losing ground in terms of speed and could only engage our protagonist in close-quarters combat, it posed no immediate threat. In a flash, the wolf unleashed its blood-tracking prowess. Crimson tendrils materialized directly behind Lin Tian. Our hero recognized this formidable skill. A level 6 spectral wolf lord wielded the blood-tracking ability. Evading its pursuit or simply fleeing was an impossibility. Lianshan's sole objective was to buy himself precious moments and devise a strategy to overcome the wolf. His mind raced, desperately seeking a viable solution to his predicament. However, he knew that neither the ogre flowers, the exploding berries, nor the misty, toxic mushrooms he had at his disposal would prove effective against such a formidable adversary. As he frantically searched for an answer, a towering tree emerged before him. Upon seeing it, Lenanon instantly recognized his opportunity. He resolved to gamble. Without a moment's hesitation, he launched himself airborne. However, aerial escape wasn't his intention. He lacked the ability to fly. Furthermore, his endurance wouldn't permit it. His objective was a tree, which he ascended and gripped firmly. Under such intense physical and mental duress, his body and mind were nearing their breaking point. This represented his final chance for survival. He couldn't afford to fail. He had already exhausted all possible efforts. Only prayer remained. He could only hope for a favorable outcome, according to his plan. The wolf had overtaken him and was gradually closing in. He believed the nimble, humanoid insect wouldn't flee. But moments later, it became clear. Underestimating the game developer was a grave error. The software engineer, Lin Tian, was now incapable of directly confronting the creature. Yet, for every formidable adversary, there's always a more imposing one. Fortunately for our protagonist, he located a fitting contender. And so, esteemed viewers, I proudly present the second combatant. Amidst this clash, a level 7 stalagmite bear lord emerged. This was precisely our protagonist's strategy, and fortunately, his gamble paid off. With the wolf preoccupied by a formidable adversary, Lin Tian opted for a hasty retreat. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he could finally exhale a sigh of relief. He had endured the depths below. A colossal battle between behemoths was unfolding. Despite being a level lower, the wolf was resolute. It showed no signs of yielding. Observing the fierce struggle, Lishan thought to himself, I need to escape this place immediately. At any second, he could be drawn back into the fray, and engaging in combat in his current state against such powerful foes was exceedingly perilous. Yet, could he truly be a hero if he didn't face the insurmountable? His system seemed to echo this sentiment. Suddenly, he realized escape was impossible. Based on the data displayed on the interface, abandoning the task now would result in failure. In his hasty retreat, he completely disregarded the objective. He realized his presence was drawing the unwanted notice of the jungle's inhabitants. Furthermore, he understood that his actions had agitated the stalagmite bear. Consequently, he presumed the system wouldn't factor the bear into the assignment. Therefore, only the ethereal wolf lord remained on his list of targets. However, there was no cause for concern regarding the wolf, as the bear's victory was inevitable. The bear was level 7 and a solitary lord, indicating superior strength. Events unfolded precisely as Lishan had foreseen. Upon the spectral wolf's demise, a system message confirmed the successful completion of the task. Besides the guaranteed 1,000 jungle points, the reward also included the activation of the skill menu. Just like in comparable conventional systems, he could enhance his abilities using those same jungle points. Lenanon was captivated by the newly revealed skill bar. Upon opening it, he discovered various skill classifications. The initial category was C-level general abilities. This group included Apply Poison, Concealment, Invisibility, and Flight. They were available for purchase at quite reasonable costs. The second grouping comprised advanced C-level skills. Currently, there was only one ability listed, Monster's Resolve. It required a substantial 1,000 jungle points, and granted him the power to invoke the Jungle Lord's Will, which could repel monsters. However, this skill had a drawback. As its potency increased, there was a potential for him to forfeit his own volition. Subsequently, there were the B, A, and S level categories, but they currently lacked any abilities. The system shop remained inactive as well. For Lin Tian, this was already quite intriguing. He resolved to locate a secure location promptly and meticulously assess every detail. However, events unfolded contrary to expectations once more. After dispatching the wolf, the bear exhibited no intention of pacifying. It instantly commenced ascending the tree, aiming to eliminate him. Lishan saw no alternative but to flee. Confronting such a formidable adversary was impossible. Without delay, he promptly began navigating through the foliage in a desperate bid for escape. The stalagmite bear lord wouldn't possess the agility of a wolf, and it lacked tracking capabilities. Considering these factors, our protagonist believed a seamless escape was attainable. However, it proved more complex. Regardless of Lishan's efforts to evade, the bear remained in relentless pursuit. Amplifying the dire circumstances was the stark reality of his singular life. A solitary blow from such a behemoth guaranteed demise. The predicament had escalated drastically. His only escape route lay in the abilities he could gain through jungle rewards. Hesitation was impossible. His adversary proved more formidable than anticipated. Venomous assaults were ineffective against his tough, thick hide. Employing stealth against his earth-based sensory perception would be futile. Concerning aerial capabilities in the current combat, mentioning them seemed pointless. However, for an immediate escape, it was ideal. The predicament was the bear had already lacerated his wings, and without healing them, this ability was rendered useless. In the ensuing moment, the bear effortlessly splintered the tree he perched upon. Swift action was imperative, for once his stamina depleted, demise was certain. His sole remaining recourse was his final potential skill, the one that would seal his destiny. Monstrous intent. A split second later, a system notification materialized before him. It confirmed his successful acquisition of the new ability. In that very instant, another creature emerged beneath the silvery glow of the full moon. Materializing midair, Lishan confronted his adversary. The impending moments held the key to victory or defeat, or was the outcome predetermined? Our protagonist was transformed, a force to be reckoned with. His velocity had multiplied exponentially, leaving the bear utterly defenseless. Without warning, the stalagmite bear lord was bombarded by 100 radiant beams. Having unleashed a barrage of 99 flash skills, our hero collapsed, utterly spent. Hard-fought but well-earned, victory was his. At last, the obstacle was overcome. However, as the system forewarned, triumph came at a cost. A searing, agonizing pain ripped through Linton's being. Unable to remain upright, he collapsed to his knees. This was the price for wielding such potent power. However, this wasn't merely a systemic constraint or penalty. The cause was far graver. Vestiges of the jungle lord's consciousness lingered, attempting to seize control of his physical form. Meanwhile, at Xinjiang Technology Corporation, the antagonists, believing they had permanently disposed of Linton, convened a meeting with the company's leadership. Addressing the enigmatic corporate executives, Lu Daolong, members of the board, announced that Lin Tian had been eliminated by jungle creatures. Henceforth, Luo Yu would formally assume his role and responsibilities. She would now oversee the advancement of apocalypse survival. The company's director stated they held lofty anticipations for Luo Yu and trusted she wouldn't disappoint them. His sole remaining curiosity concerned any tidings regarding the jungle lord. Luo Yu cited a prior investigation revealing that, throughout the jungle's history, high-ranking creatures were known as overlords. While these beings could be vanquished, their essence and might would endure, persisting even in a disembodied, spectral form. This ethereal presence could subsequently be inherited. This process somewhat resembles rebirth or reincarnation. Consequently, inheriting this power carries the inherent peril of being consumed by the predecessor's will, the former sovereign of the jungle. The recipient would be reduced to a mere vessel, their consciousness utterly obliterated. The jungle lord would then fully usurp their form and reign over the jungle once more, as it did millennia ago. Upon hearing this, a member of the council remarked that such power was inherently precarious and should not be pursued, as it would inevitably lead to calamity. However, the company's CEO held a dissenting viewpoint. Indeed, he acknowledged the inherent peril this power posed to its wielder, specifically those lacking sufficient spiritual fortitude to repel the encroaching consciousness of the Jungle Lord. Anyone attempting to confront the Jungle Lord faced a significant risk in such a psychic confrontation. They could be overwhelmed, their own power usurped in the process. Regardless, should humanity desire to penetrate the jungle's depths, they must first master this formidable force. And who better than those assembled here? Understand that substantial rewards often accompany significant hazards. Therefore, they should endeavor to harness it. Lao Yu deferentially inclined her head before her superiors, pledging her utmost dedication to the task. She would spare no effort in seeking out the Jungle Lord's power on behalf of the company. Meanwhile, deep within the jungle, Lianshan was undergoing his initial encounter with the spirit of the former Jungle Lord, whose anguished cries reverberated throughout the lush expanse. He was barely conscious, fighting to stay awake. He pondered if this was the lingering essence of the Jungle Lord's consciousness. Lenanon, unable to maintain his footing, collapsed to the earth. His claws scraped against the ground in a frantic effort to withstand the agony. He perceived it infiltrating his thoughts, and if he succumbed, he'd transform into a mindless instrument of destruction, a monstrous aberration. He had to resist to avoid losing himself forever. Surrender wasn't an option. He couldn't give in. He had to survive. Survive. To exact retribution upon the scoundrels who had decimated his existence, exploited him, and then attempted to terminate him. At last, his unwavering thirst for vengeance empowered him to confront the former Jungle Lord. With a final roar, he expelled the intruder. The bellow resonated through the forest in a surge, and the Jungle Lord's spirit departed with it. In the immediate aftermath, an energy beam illuminated the nocturnal jungle, and Lishan's carapace shattered. As the debris settled, his triumph was evident. But it was a narrow victory indeed. He had at last overcome the lingering effects of the Jungle Lord form. But at what price? Though the raw might of this Jungle Lord metamorphosis ability is formidable. Its toll on his psyche was substantial. The Jungle Lord's spirit shall resurface, and the victor of their next clash remains uncertain. Furthermore, a new evolutionary stage has unlocked, and while it's still monstrous in form, it exhibits more humanoid features while preserving human sentience. Nevertheless, he ought to have initiated the Helen Butterfly Elf Protocol to fully develop into a complete monster eventually. Lacking their assistance, his spirit will inevitably crumble. Yet, they offer a glimmer of hope for these extraordinary beings. The Helen Butterfly Elves are a light-affiliated elven species residing in the jungle, possessing exceptional auxiliary capabilities. A few years prior, Lishan personally initiated this project and even proposed it to his superiors. However, they thoroughly disapproved of the concept. They deemed the Helen Butterfly race insufficiently potent, and its influence on the game too insignificant. Furthermore, accessing their territory, the Labyrinth Valley, was exceedingly perilous. Therefore, Lu Dong initially dismissed these unfortunate elves, believing more pressing matters demanded attention. However, Laitan persisted and clarified that their game lacked a creature to function as a guide, an NPC, and the Helen Butterfly Elf was undeniably the ideal candidate. Nevertheless, Lu Dong remained unconvinced. He even approached the director to pressure Laitan. However, he declined, stating the matter wasn't worth disputing. Ultimately, Lin Tian oversaw the operation and held ultimate authority. Instead, the director suggested Lu Daolong attend to his responsibilities. Given his oversight of combat expeditions, he could delegate the assignment, should he choose not to undertake it personally. Thus, he opted to entrust this mission to Luo Feng from the secondary unit. He'll undoubtedly accomplish it, as he relishes such endeavors. Now, our protagonist needed to promptly commence the search. The Helen Butterfly Elf's abilities can amplify his psychic energies, and if a pact can be successfully forged, his monster's resolve will be limitless. Previously, he intended to leverage the organization's resources to access the Helen Butterfly Elves. Subsequently, the Helen Butterfly Initiative was assigned to Luo Feng of the auxiliary team. Our hero lamented that Lu Daolong hadn't regarded this mission with appropriate gravity. Consequently, it remained unclaimed. If his recollection was accurate, that individual from the second squad, Luofeng was a highly proficient and seasoned jungle explorer player, and given that he'd been entrusted with this assignment, he was likely present in the vicinity. To confront him effectively, thorough preparation was essential. Linton needed to devise a method to access the remaining general abilities. To achieve this, accumulating evolution points was imperative. The subsequent primary mission presented itself for this very purpose. He was tasked with safeguarding the jungle, as his role as Jungle Lord obligated him to fulfill this responsibility, oust trespassers, and defend the jungle's diverse communities. This extended mission comprised numerous sub-objectives. By accomplishing the primary objectives, he could acquire B-level skill panel activation and unlock monster mode. Completing routine, straightforward daily tasks yielded a mere 50 or 100 jungle points. For instance, everyday tasks included being affable and approachable, and aiding a struggling fungal community in restoring their defenses and securing their goodwill. Alternatively, he could elevate his standing by arbitrating the conflict between the spider lyre and the inhabitants of the dry bones cavern to demonstrate his authority as the jungle sovereign. Linton had observed this categorization into primary and secondary objectives and recognized the simplicity of some of them. Unfortunately, the compensation for these was meager. It was evident that the more challenging and perilous the undertaking, the greater the remuneration. Therefore, our protagonist was primarily focused on the principal assignment, the prize for which was activating the monstrous form. It certainly sounded captivating. Regardless, it was imperative to commence operations and accumulate more points. Thus, Lighton resolved to initially tackle a few daily tasks and acquire a couple of life-preserving abilities. So, Lighton assisted the fungal clan in completing their construction, and the enthusiastic fungi offered him a taste of their peculiar cuisine. Naturally, our protagonist declined such generous offerings as best he could. However, the most crucial aspect wasn't the presents, but rather the fact that he acquired 50 jungle points for successfully completing this assignment. In the spider's lair, he was harassed by a voluptuous arachnid temptress who appeared to have less than honorable intentions. Our hero narrowly escaped the clutches of this alluring creature. Her touch was simply too clinging. Regardless, this undertaking was successfully concluded, and an additional 100 jungle points were procured. Next, Lin Tian was safeguarding avian eggs on a precipice, fending off a venomous serpent creature, while enduring pecks to the head from a newly hatched buzzard chick that had emerged from its shell. This continued until he finally amassed 700 points to access the new ability. But, the exhaustion he endured throughout this ordeal. Now, even interacting with the system interface felt like an insurmountable challenge. Our protagonist had 3 C-rank general abilities at his disposal. Given his accumulated points, he could only select one. Now, he faced the dilemma of choosing the most advantageous option: infuse attacks with poison, acquire the skill of stealth, allowing him to utilize the jungle's cover to vanish, or gain the power of flight by sprouting wings, granting him high-speed aerial mobility. Furthermore, a new mission presented itself: safeguard the jungle by eliminating trespassers. To accomplish this objective, he needed to hunt down the human race encroaching from beyond the jungle's borders. This would demonstrate his commitment as the Jungle Lord. A substantial reward awaited him for completing this task, and as an added benefit, the in-game store became accessible. Reviewing the mission details, Lin Tian deduced that eliminating intruders equated to hunting human players, though this held little significance for him currently. His sole current aspiration was to unlock the shop function. This was of paramount importance. After all, because of it, jungle points could be utilized for more than mere skills. Now committed to the monstrous path, he would soon relinquish his human identity entirely, transforming into a genuine jungle sovereign. Aided by this marketplace feature, night had descended upon the jungle. Its tranquility was disrupted solely by the distant clash of combat emanating from afar. The perpetrators were a band of hunters assaulting a hapless goblin. Their objective was to locate the labyrinth's entrance, for only by penetrating the valley's core and procuring the hidden key could one access the true domain of the Helen butterfly fairies. Having vanquished a single goblin, they deemed it less formidable than the rumors suggested. Nevertheless, this wasn't the source of the hunters' elation and anticipation of triumph. Their primary interest lay in the area's contents, specifically the legendary Fern Tree Realm. It was rumored to be a breathtakingly beautiful location, concealing enigmas and mysteries. A forum advertisement proclaimed that Upon accessing the valley and acquiring a hidden key, a substantial prize awaited. They anticipated a formidable challenge and were astonished to encounter only feeble monsters. At the entryway, it seemed they might achieve a considerable gain without any peril. However, as events unfolded, mehr Moments later, their light-hearted expedition proved far from secure. An arrow swiftly penetrated the head of their two unwary leaders. The startling sight of blood spattering everywhere filled the remaining group with terror. The attack was too sudden for the hunters to comprehend. The perpetrator was a goblin, armed with a bow and a sinister grin. But this time he wasn't alone. And no, there weren't just 3 of them. A whole legion of goblins was present. A handful of goblins hardly menaced the hunters, but confronting hundreds of armed goblins was another story. The outcome of such a battle was inevitable. Despite the hunters' valiant efforts, the goblins left them no chance of survival. Having secured their domain and avenged themselves, the goblins commenced gathering spoils from the fallen hunters. Scavenging valuables from deceased adventurers was likely their cherished hobby, but their tranquil leisure was short-lived. Abruptly, a fiery barricade engulfed them. Ensnared, their attempts to flee this inferno proved futile. This was genuine sorcery. This time, the goblins faced a formidable adversary. This was no match for the pathetic hunters they had vanquished. These were true virtuosos of their profession. It was a contingent of expert hunters commanded by the ferocious Luo Feng. They, too, were intrigued by the forum's quest, despite dispatching them from the game's primary development hub, capitalizing on the small contingents of novices who had also ventured to test their fortunes. On the S-rank assignment, they were merely utilized as decoys, having effortlessly drawn out the creatures. The sole remaining task was their extermination. In the ensuing moment, a brilliantly luminescent, golden arrow ascended skyward. Abruptly, it fragmented into a multitude of projectiles, and a lethal barrage descended directly upon the goblins. Yet, the arrows weren't their only peril. The remaining hunters also charged into the fray. Our protagonist observed from the periphery. Even seasoned hunters couldn't detect him, concealed by his cloaking mechanism. He deemed the utilization of novice hunters as bait a viable tactic, albeit beneath him. Regrettably, his current monstrous appearance precluded safe entry into human settlements. Ultimately, locating trespassers could be readily achieved through this method. Harming innocent onlookers was entirely contrary to Lien's character. However, the individuals comprising this squad were markedly different. They were the perpetrators exploiting fellow researchers from the same organization solely to vie for provisions. In the past, our protagonist frequently encountered such occurrences. Yet, invariably, the corporate leadership disregarded the matter and dismissed it as mere happenstance. Our hero, cognizant of the reality, refused to tolerate such iniquity. He attempted to persuade Lu Dalong to cease employing hunters with illicit backgrounds and terminate these gratuitous acts of violence. However, his pleas proved futile against Lu Dalong's corrupt mindset, who merely offered a strained smile in response. He feigned ignorance of the subject at hand and cautioned Lin Tian against meddling in affairs beyond his purview. He even proposed that our protagonist contact law enforcement if he suspected criminal activity. In short, this group was utterly deplorable, who also partook in his own persecution and capture before being deceitfully eliminated. Therefore, he felt no remorse in dispatching them. They had it coming. However, Lin Tian faced a significant obstacle in their eradication. A considerable power disparity remained between them. Their ranks boasted numerous formidable individuals. Some even attained the 13th tier. But the greatest threat was their commander, Luo Feng, a level 15 berserker. Each one was a ruthless killer without compunction. Over the preceding days, our protagonist prioritized the most rapid leveling strategy. Despite this, he remained only at the 10th level. And since harnessing the monster's essence was impossible, confronting so many adversaries above his level was still perilous. Fortunately, upon completing his assignments, he acquired points that unlocked the cloaking feature. He had accumulated points, granting him access to the stealth function. This ability allowed him to approach undetected. He remained unseen, formulating a strategy. Furthermore, prior daily mission compensation exceeded mere jungle points. The remaining combat rested solely on him, and naturally, on the cheerful, eager to assist mushroom companion. High above the jungle canopy, a bird glided through the air. Due to this avian ally, a team member gained an aerial perspective. Unfortunately, at that juncture, Dense fog obscured over 70% of the vicinity. This severely hampered her spirit animal's vision. Upon hearing this, Luo Feng instructed her to command her spirit beast to descend and meticulously examine the surroundings. The girl instantly dismissed this notion, reasoning that proximity to the ground would place it within striking distance of the monstrous adversaries. However, the large man disregarded this concern entirely. He promptly presented her with a dilemma. Escape or face demise, he declared. Trapped, the young woman obeyed. She followed his directive. Repercussions were swift. A projectile emerged from the fog at high velocity, immediately piercing her spectral companion. The girl instantly expelled blood. The assault on her companion directly impacted her. Yet, Lo Fang's sole concern was her vision. His expression betrayed a readiness to eliminate her upon failure. He'd dispose of her instantly if she didn't deliver. Luckily, fortune favored her. She discerned the valley's topography. This was a boon for the company. Luo Feng, acting decisively, commanded an immediate departure for the valley. Shortly after, the hunting party encountered a cavernous opening. Whether it was their intended path remained uncertain. One fact was undeniable. A putrid stench permeated the air, its intensity overwhelming. The entire party was forced to clamp their hands over their noses. The source of the foul odor, massive heaps of monstrous dung. These were strewn across the cavern floor. The girl who had previously inspected the rope was astonished. During her initial reconnaissance, she'd observed nothing like this. There had been no such chungji. The archer remarked that the droppings appeared recent. This implied they had been deposited quite lately. Sarah, the mage within their ranks, promptly proposed altering their course and seeking an alternate route. Luo Feng, conversely, held a dissenting viewpoint. If the jungle creature was intentionally attempting to divert them, the alternative path likely presented greater danger. Therefore, he resolved to maintain their current course. He promptly directed the others to clear a path. Unbeknownst to them, Linden had been observing them continuously. Contrary to his anticipation, the hunting party pressed onward. His snare seemed too conspicuous. The scheme wasn't proving effective. That posed no issue. He could still proceed gradually. It was time to initiate Plan B. The adorable fungus perched on his shoulder was also poised to exert its utmost. Speaking of fungi, they resided in colonies. They were ubiquitous throughout the jungle. Despite appearing innocuous, they were invaluable to the jungle's ecosystem. Their innate developmental abilities allowed unimpeded subterranean movement and facilitated our protagonist's exploration of the valley. Lin Tian exerted considerable effort to cultivate goodwill and secure the fungi's favor. He even partook in the fungal feast they prepared. After securing the profound camaraderie and approval of their monarch, he received assistance from numerous fungal tribes. This included the fungus accompanying him. Several varieties of fungi existed. The first possessed purifying properties, whose purpose was to cleanse the air of foul smells. The other variety of fungi were stink mushrooms. These were massive in size and capable of emitting noxious substances and stenches. This was the fungus our protagonist utilized. The moment had arrived for the true confrontation. It was time for the hunt, and to ensure its success, he had made all necessary preparations. Excitement mushrooms would play a crucial part. These specialized in releasing a potent aroma to incite madness in monsters. A solitary mushroom could frenzy a whole pack of beasts, and a cluster of them could plunge a small section of the jungle into chaos. The instant the spirit wolves caught a whiff of this scent, they instantly snapped their chains and frantically sought any living quarry. A band of hunters soon navigated this fetid cavern. Despite avoiding a direct confrontation, they still appeared rather disheveled. Grumbling arose, but Luofu promptly silenced everyone. Based on the cartographic data, this zone should have provided safety. However, that was merely the expectation. In fact, mere moments later, one of the men gestured towards something ahead, his face etched with confusion. A faint luminescence emanated from behind some foliage, but the man possessed sufficient experience to grasp its significance. A look of sheer terror contorted his features. Instantly, he bolted from the approaching horde of enraged spectral wolves. His frantic cries pierced the air as the supposed safe haven indicated on the map was no longer secure. Yet, even amidst this predicament, Luo Feng remained composed. He regarded these as merely a handful of inferior creatures that had likely strayed there unintentionally. There was no cause for alarm. However, moments later, it became evident that the wolves were more numerous than anticipated. Scores of spectral wolves materialized from the woods. This presented a potential threat. Furthermore, the emerging monsters included more than just wolves. This was quite peculiar. A single question plagued the hunters. Why were various creatures congregating and assaulting them? But Luo Feng already possessed the answer. This couldn't be a spontaneous occurrence. The logical conclusion was that someone had orchestrated a trap. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. The sheer number of monsters was overwhelming. Recognizing their inability to overcome, Luo Feng commanded a full retreat. The hunters frantically sought escape. Few succeeded, as the beasts had decimated most of their ranks. Meanwhile, those who escaped faced another unexpected event. An enormous fungus materialized in the sky, plummeting earthward with alarming velocity. Fortunately, it missed them, failing to crush them beneath its weight. The violet pheromones it emitted terrified the creatures, sending them fleeing in a panicked frenzy. The surviving hunters were astonished. For a moment, they believed they were rescued, but that was far from reality. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the mist. A voice inquired if they remembered him. Everyone froze in place, paralyzed with shock. That voice was undeniably familiar. A smile crept across our hero's face, a sinister, villainous grin. Regardless, he was pleased, elated to finally exact his retribution. Lishan materialized before them, intentionally removing his mask to ensure his recognition. Notwithstanding his altered visage and transformed attributes, the man known as Lin Tian remained discernible. The hunters were astonished by his survival, and grasping the gravity of their predicament, they hastily attempted to vindicate themselves. They insisted the assassination wasn't their initiative, but the corporation's mandate. The company coerced their actions. Their pleas for clemency were so pathetic that Lin Tian momentarily feigned belief that it was merely their occupation. However, they swiftly sealed their doom by mistaking his pause for an opportunity to strike. The remaining mob charged our protagonist, yelling, "Perish, you beast!" How utterly foolish they were. Their actions sealed their fate. Even if they previously claimed it was merely a task, their deeds revealed their deception. Just a moment. With lightning speed, he darted between the assailants' shadows, eliminating them instantaneously. Those feeble adversaries were utterly defenseless. Now, lying in the dirt, any personal vendetta against our protagonist was futile. Immediately following their demise, a system notification appeared, updating the progress of the intruder elimination objective. By dispatching these 4 hunters, he had already achieved 40% mission completion. He also obtained an interim reward of 400 jungle points. Besides jungle points, Lin Tian had also ascended to level 11. Observing the dispersed corpses, he recognized his misjudgment. He had previously assumed he would hesitate to take a life. He was now certain. He no longer felt any connection to humanity. Thanks to the points earned, he'd amassed a total of 500 points. Yet it was still insufficient. Accumulating those points had been a real hassle, and they were still not enough to unlock the flight ability. At least he had valuable allies like these fungi. With their assistance, he'd successfully exhausted and divided the hunters. He had sown discord among their ranks. It was time to revisit the Darkstone Forest. The Goblin General was proving to be quite a challenge. Time for Plan C. Meanwhile, within the Darkstone Forest, a goblin was en route to inform his leader. His message was critical. Numerous hairless primates, known as humans, had infiltrated the valley, slaying all his brethren outside. This news displeased the Goblin General greatly. His slumber was once again disturbed by those pesky humans. They emerged once more from behind the Helen Butterfly clan's territory. It was time he handled them personally. After all, the monarch scheme was still unfinished, and those hairless apes couldn't be allowed near the eucalyptus. The entire goblin horde must accompany him and eliminate all interlopers. In the meantime, the remaining members of Lu Feng's party retreated to their encampment. Their commander, Lu Feng himself, was enraged by the botched incursion, and he knew where to focus his anger. He placed all responsibility for the unsuccessful attack and their substantial casualties upon the young man, tasked with reconnaissance and eagle control. Luo Feng was certain that all their difficulties stemmed from the lad's inadequate scouting. He had directed them down a treacherous path. This was an act he wouldn't pardon. However, the youth saw no fault in his actions whatsoever. He wept, insisting the route map was flawless, and he was baffled by what had gone awry. Perhaps the creatures had simply become more cunning, developing their own tactics and schemes to ambush and eliminate the hunters. Despite his justifications to Luo Feng, his explanation sounded like utter balderdash, unbelievable. Instead, he sought retribution for the errors that resulted in the demise of his comrades. Fortunately for the young man, he possessed a strikingly attractive sister who intervened on his behalf before Luo Feng. She persuaded him that harming or ending the life of her soul sibling simply for a single transgression was unwarranted. It was solely due to her influence, coupled with her position as the mage leader within his team, and her numerous sacrifices for their collective benefit, that Luo Feng consented to spare him. However, he cautioned that were it not for her, he would undoubtedly extract his eyes this time. Therefore, he should exert greater effort in the future, lest even his sister prove unable to shield him from his wrath. The terrified youth felt gratitude towards the captain, as second chances from him were a rarity. He then retired for the night, accompanied, and directed the remaining members of the squad to take a day of rest, to recuperate and restore their energy. Planning to resume their journey the following day, several of his soldiers couldn't help but discuss their leader's choices. It was apparent to all present that his blunder had resulted in the casualties. Yet, no one possessed the courage to confront him directly. Rather, an individual remarked rather loudly that Sarah had resumed her activities that day. Naturally, she overheard them and was quite irritated by their conduct. As her former partner had also heard their remarks, the situation could escalate dramatically. He was seated nearby, cleansing his archery equipment after the engagement. His expression was incredibly somber, and he struggled to contain himself from confronting the individual, Luo Feng, the object of his intense animosity. Meanwhile, concealed by invisibility, Lin Tian observed the events unfolding within the hunter's encampment. From an elevated vantage point, he recalled his time with the corporation, when he'd reviewed the dossiers on maids Sarah and Archer Chong. Back then, their records indicated they were a couple, but that now appeared to have been amended. Perhaps Chong had engaged in illicit activities, necessitating his retreat into the wilderness. He'd aligned himself with Luo Feng's band of bounty hunters. Following Shun Quang Technology's acquisition of the jungle, the government's jungle bill was never enacted, transforming the jungle, both in reality and the game world, into a haven for all manner of lawbreakers. It became a sanctuary where criminals could evade consequences. Thus, the game world was teeming with various scoundrels who, due to their inherent aggression, were incapable of functioning in civilized society. They reveled in the freedom they found there. Ultimately, the jungle's law proved even more ruthless than the criminals themselves. Lishan scrutinized this Chong fellow, recalling his pitiful demeanor and evident cuckoldry. Sarah possessed a fiercely independent spirit. Our protagonist intended to exploit this trait. Chang's evident disdain for Luo Feng and his current act of applying poison to his arrows proved advantageous for Lin Tian. Time elapsed, and the moon ascended high above the hunters' encampment. They reveled in carefree leisure and merriment. At the stroke of midnight, the scoundrels gathered around the bonfire, gossiped about the happenings in the adjacent tent, their laughter unrestrained and boisterous. Meanwhile, Chong lay distant from the group, sleep clearly evading him that night. He was consumed by hatred. But that wasn't all. A pair of fungi stealthily approached him, releasing hallucinogenic spores into the air. Under their influence, Chang's perception instantly intensified, colors becoming incredibly vivid. The vision of Luo Feng and Sarah was unbearable. Yet, the hallucinations persisted. Sarah, the object of his simultaneous love and intense loathing, continuously materialized before his eyes, now embraced by another. Two jovial fungi were the source of these visions. One transmitted and magnified distant noises, while the other warped the victim's perception, blurring the line between reality and fantasy. Our hero's scheme was both ingenious and straightforward. Under the fungi's influence, Chung was compelled to act foolishly, to behave in a manner that in a lucid state he would never contemplate. Chang had finally snapped, marching directly toward Luo Feng's tent. Meanwhile, approaching from the opposite direction, a goblin horde, led by their commander, Gul, advanced, kicking up a cloud of dust. However, the goblins suffered from a significant flaw, their dim-wittedness. Despite Lien Tian's guidance and clear directions, they remained too sluggish to arrive punctually. Our protagonist's scheme involved orchestrating a stage confrontation. The actors would inflict injuries upon each other, setting the stage for his grand entrance. He would then emerge and swiftly eliminate them all in a single decisive blow. Lien deemed it an impeccable strategy. And while events initially unfolded as anticipated, Chang steadily approached the tent. Our hero silently urged him to swiftly dispatch them. Meanwhile, the other hunters remained perplexed by his intentions. Could he truly intend to parley with the captain? Yet, why then would his bow be poised for action? Chung himself halted abruptly before the tent's entrance. He sensed that within lay the epicenter of all malevolence and darkness. A primal fear surged within him, dwarfing even his envy and vengeful desires. He grappled with his own audacity. How could he have dared venture so close, harboring murderous intent towards the captain? Terror warned him that such an act would be met with swift and fatal retribution. At that moment, Lin Tian's meticulously crafted plan began to unravel, all thanks to this petrified fool, utterly incapable of action. Turns out, this Chang possessed remarkable mental fortitude. Now, our protagonist must devise an alternate strategy. Luo Feng observed Chang approaching his shelter, but he was acutely aware of Chang's craven nature. He scoffed at Chang's hesitation. Despite being her former beau, Sarah expressed concern for him, urging Luo Feng to refrain from mockery. And Luo Feng swiftly reassured her he wouldn't harm Chang, provided he avoided trouble and refrained from open defiance. After all, Chang was a gifted individual, a valuable asset to their team. This arrangement satisfied Sarah, and she shifted her attention to Luo Feng's injury, which remained incompletely mended. Apparently, the weapon employed had been imbued with magic. Thus, its healing proved to be a challenging endeavor. Sarah had also participated in that confrontation, narrowly escaping death. Luo Feng, too, couldn't erase the memory of that battle. Back then, he assumed it was merely another corporate orchestrated ambush. However, that proved to be false. Their target was quite formidable. The combatant proved to be Lin Tian himself. He then astonished Luo Feng by displaying the prowess of a warrior, the endurance of a mage, and the nimbleness of a rogue. Simultaneously, Luo Feng had encountered no one quite like him. Reflecting on his employment history, he explained that he initially was merely a common soldier of fortune, feigning weakness to circumvent challenging assignments. Regrettably, he was allocated to one of 9 squads tasked with ambushing Lin Tian. The destinies of those groups were rather unfortunate. Only his unit endured, yet he firmly believed it was a stroke of luck that the formidable champion, Lin Tian, had perished. Otherwise, he would have ascended to become the wilderness's most dominant being and a truly daunting adversary. Meanwhile, Lin Tian was brimming with vitality and observed from above as Chang became immobile. Judging by his hesitant and cowardly demeanor, it was instantly apparent why the woman had deserted him. Despite this flawless scheme, to incite conflict among the hunters falling through, it was inconsequential. The ghoul horde would soon descend upon the encampment, and they would undoubtedly handle those jerks. Ultimately, aside from the unfortunate incident with Chang, the endeavor could be deemed a triumph. A resounding cry suddenly engulfed the camp. Enemy attack! Luo Feng, who had just drifted off to sleep, bolted upright, disoriented and bewildered. Upon exiting the tent, he witnessed the battle raging in full intensity. Goblins were already swarming the area. He and Sarah promptly engaged in combat, but he remained perplexed. Why hadn't an alarm been sounded sooner? Why was there such disorder within the hunters' ranks and formation? What became of the approaching monster alert system? Was it truly demolished by the goblins? He was oblivious to the mushrooms' involvement. They had pilfered all the inferior gems utilized by the hunters to establish a protective magical barrier around the encampment to forewarn them of approaching creatures. Luo Feng couldn't fathom how a dim-witted goblin could conceive of dismantling the magical barrier before initiating an assault. While a stunned Luo Feng grappled with unanswered questions, the ghoul goblin commander commanded all other goblins to clear a path. He intended to swiftly dispatch this furless primate, Luo Feng, with a single strike. However, the seasoned hunter wouldn't succumb easily. He employed his axe to deflect the onslaught, It was a clash between two berserkers relying on raw power, but the goblin commander possessed a distinct advantage in strength, a fact Luo Feng quickly discerned. As his arms faltered and trembled from the strain, Commander Ghoul wouldn't prolong the fight and launched another strike to vanquish his adversary. But Luo Feng wasn't about to engage a formidable foe. He'd long abandoned any notion of honor and would resort to any measure to preserve his own life. As he fled, he implored the other hunters for assistance, urging them to fire upon the beast with their arrows. However, the embattled hunters delivered grim tidings. The archer was absent from their ranks. Chang had departed the encampment mere moments before the onslaught. Luo Feng, still endeavoring to evade the ghoul, was enraged that Chang had the audacity to forsake the group. So he accessed the system interface to report this scoundrel's treachery against the company. Meanwhile, Chang himself was close by, observing the skirmish in the camp. Even he was astonished by the swiftness of the assault, but he clearly had no intention of intervening. He reasoned that after Sarah's departure, he was entitled to reciprocate their abandonment. Now, the events unfolding were of no concern to him. Let those scoundrels perish in flames. They got what they deserved, he mused. Chong concluded that lingering was pointless and hastened his escape. But upon entering the woods, a shadowy figure, our protagonist, gave chase. He observed that Chong's power level remained formidable, surpassing his own by 2. Nevertheless, this discrepancy could be neutralized with strategy and the element of surprise. Regrettably, Chong's elevated level had granted him a particularly advantageous passive ability, heightened senses. Before Lien Tian could initiate his attack, Chong detected the approaching presence and grew cautious. He would not be taken unaware. Chong Ji swiftly responded upon realizing he was being followed. Without hesitation, he deployed an explosive arrow defensively, mistaking his pursuer for a creature. To his astonishment, after striking his mark, Chong Ji discovered it was a mere decoy intended to divert his attention. In that instant, Lin Tian capitalized on the opportunity, unleashing a lightning-fast strike against Zhong Ji. But Zhong Ji had already anticipated his foe's maneuver, swiftly pivoting to deflect the blow. Zhong Ji then repelled Lin Tian, conceding the ingenuity of Lin Tian's diversionary tactic and subsequent ambush, followed by a stealthy assault. Despite the unexpected attack, Zhong Ji maintained a staunch defense, proving a formidable adversary. Lin Tian proclaimed his possession of an assassin's nimble reflexes. Exploiting his agility, Lin Tian vanished once again, activating his cloaking ability. Zhong Ji pondered his opponent's sudden disappearance, questioning if his adversary relied exclusively on nimble movements to evade him. Zhong Ji contemplated whether he faced a human or a monstrous being. To ascertain the truth, he resolved to employ his enchanting light technique to reveal his opponent's true visage. With the arrow of enchanting light, the surroundings would be brilliantly illuminated. Yet the instant he released his projectile, Lin Tian effortlessly intercepted and shattered, plunging the vicinity into obscurity. Even Lin Tian questioned if his concealment was ineffective, as Chang'e precisely ascertained his position. Lin Tian then informed Chang'e that such strategies offered him no advantage. Chang Ji was enraged, exclaiming that Lin Tian was beneath him as an adversary. Chang Ji subsequently launched an arrow toward Lin, but to his astonishment, a sudden affliction weakened him. This occurred due to Lin's companion, Mist Toxin Mushroom, employing its unique capability. Mist Toxin Mushroom possessed the power to discharge subtle poisons that infiltrated the system via the airways. Typically, the body could neutralize the toxin, yet it had the potential to detonate internally during periods of intense physical exertion. Remarkably, Chang Ji also discerned that it was a toxic vapor. However, he observed that the toxic gas was rather faint and not immediately lethal. Zhong Ji believed he possessed the antidote, but it was more advantageous to feign ignorance, allowing him to exploit the circumstances. Lin Tian was equally astonished that Zhong Ji remained composed under pressure, demonstrating his worthiness as an elite squad commander. Lin Tian cautioned Zhong Ji not to anticipate a fair confrontation. He then bellowed, "Mushrooms!" Suddenly, various fungi materialized out of thin air. Gradually, a complete contingent of diverse mushroom species congregated before Zhong Ji. Witnessing this, Zhong Ji was startled, recognizing the imminent danger he hadn't foreseen. The mushrooms unleashed a barrage of attacks upon Zhongji, enveloping him in mud and slime. Lin Tian commended his fungal companions for their efforts and advanced toward Zhongji, declaring that they could now conclude the battle. Much to Lin's astonishment, however, a volley of arrows came hurtling towards him. Glancing upwards, Lin Tian observed Cheng-Ji rising from the muck and mire. His health was even regenerating gradually. Cheng-Ji roared that he would obliterate Lin. But Lin Tian remained so nimble, he effortlessly evaded the projectiles. Lin Tian then retorted to Cheng-Ji that, despite his potent antitoxin concoction, sustaining him amidst the potent blend of venoms, the arrow's power and precision remained significantly impaired. Thus, Cheng-Ji's assaults were no longer impactful. At that juncture, Lin Tian unveiled himself, astounding Cheng-Ji with the revelation that his adversary was Lin. Before Cheng-Ji could react, Lin Tian swiftly brandished his blade, cleaving Cheng-Ji in two. This resulted in his demise with a touch of irony. Lin Tian bai fao ta Cheng-Ji. He sarcastically called him a companion. Lin Tian then got an alert that his assignment was halfway finished. The compensation was 100 wilderness credits. He hit level 12 in the meantime. Lin Tian contemplated achieving level 12. He wondered how and where to utilize the wilderness points. Abruptly, he sensed an unusual presence nearby. Glancing around, he spotted a mystical teleportation sigil mark had conjured behind him. Lin Tian swiftly shielded his face. The setting abruptly changed to Luo Feng's headquarters. Goblins were still wreaking havoc there. Amidst the pandemonium, an ally notified Luo Feng of Cheng-Ji's demise. Luo Feng reacted with rage. He declared he foresaw this occurring. Someone had caused mayhem and seized the chance to neutralize their isolated teammate. He swiftly regained his composure, however, and proclaimed that he maintained complete authority. He then directed Sarah to utilize her magical abilities to banish them. Sarah commenced channeling her power. She initiated a ritualistic teleportation incantation, and in mere moments, they disappeared from their stronghold. The goblins and their sovereign were astonished, baffled about the events that transpired and their whereabouts. Meanwhile, Lin Tian awaited the arrival of everyone through the gateway. He pondered if it was a ruse to lure him out of hiding. Within seconds, Luo Feng and the others materialized. However, Luo Feng was startled and apprehensive at the sight of Lin. He mistook him for a monstrous being. He entertained the notion that Lin Tian might have discerned a distinctive attribute. Lin Tian's departure left him questioning if it was indeed that individual, and how such a thing was feasible. The game's challenge lies in the fact that at equivalent levels, creatures tend to be marginally more formidable and larger than humans. Nevertheless, humans possess a single advantage over monsters: their cunning and strategic thinking, forming alliances and laying ambushes, which enabled humans to eliminate creatures up to 10 levels their superior. This had consistently been their distinct advantage. Nevertheless, a creature was now employing human strategies to pursue humans. Hence, Lu Feng was astonished to witness Lin Tian as a monster, baffled by its capacity for human-like intellect. At that juncture, Lin Tian removes his disguise and inquires if Luo Fan has forgotten him. Observing Lin Tian before him, Luo Fan was stunned, his voice trembling as he cried out, "It's Lin!" The others were equally astonished to recognize Lin Tian, the one responsible for decimating the 3rd and 4th squads. Most astonishingly, Lin Tian was still alive. Consequently, some attempted to flee, proclaiming their desire to live. However, Luo Feng commanded them to halt and cease running. Luo Feng then assured them not to fear Lin. He clarified that while he was unaware of the specific technique Lin Tian employed to occupy a creature's form, his current power level was not particularly formidable. After all, Lin Tian was merely at rank 12. Upon hearing this, Lin Tian also recognized the overwhelming number of Lu Feng's allies. Even if every single mushroom joined the fray, victory was far from guaranteed. Moreover, Lin Tian worried that his fungal ace in the hole would be revealed. Although he might have a fighting chance by harnessing the beast's resolve, he doubted he could reclaim his own willpower this time. Luo Feng informed his companions that Lin Tian was no longer the human combatant he once was. He had devolved into a feeble creature, lurking in the darkness and resorting to subterfuge. Luo then expressed to Lin Tian his regret at not having eliminated him earlier. However, now He planned to utilize his sorcerer companion to imprison Lin's spirit before obliterating him. He further proclaimed that on this occasion, he wouldn't allow Lin Tian to evade him again. Abruptly, Lishan began to grin, his smile gradually escalating into boisterous laughter. Lishan then inquired if they had threatened to annihilate him, imploring them to cease their mockery, as Lu Daolong had commanded 7 squads, yet remained unable to vanquish him in direct combat. Linton then questioned whether they genuinely believed themselves capable of such a feat. Upon hearing this, a wave of fear washed over everyone, while Luo Feng derided them, denouncing them as a collection of failures. Without hesitation, Luo Feng assaulted Linton with his combat technique, the mountain-cleaving strike, and commanded Linton to perish. At that instant, Lishan engaged his newfound ability of flight, and unexpectedly, to the astonishment of all present, a tremendous detonation erupted nearby. Smoke from the explosion engulfed the vicinity. Everyone assumed it resulted from Lu Feng's assault, and pondered whether Lin Tian had perished. However, they soon realized that Lin Tian was airborne. Meanwhile, Lin Tian received an alert. He had achieved mastery of aerial locomotion. Soaring through the air, Lin joyfully greeted everyone, declaring his jungle a welcoming sanctuary. Lin even provoked them, daring them to embrace their impending demise. Left with no alternative, they commenced their assault on Lin, yelling to bring him down. Observing this, Lin Tian chuckled and questioned their belief in their ability to strike him. From such a remove, Sarah entered the fray, requesting everyone to clear a path. Shen then unleashed her radiant light array assault upon Lin. To everyone's astonishment, it connected with Lin. Witnessing this, Lin Tian commended her, conceding that conjuring homing magic at such a distance truly qualified her as the mage leader. However, he quickly quipped, remarking that its velocity was still well within his agility threshold. As Lin Tian attempted to evade the mages, with a mighty heave, Lu Feng hurled the axe toward Lin. Anticipating the attack, Linton evaded it, but still suffered a minor graze. He pondered the sheer power of a level 15 warrior's throwing prowess. Linton then ascended further skyward, leaving Luo Feng below, feeling a pang of discouragement. His attacks had yet to connect with Linton. At that instant, Linton raised a defiant middle finger, vowing to obliterate them in their next encounter. He then vanished from the scene. Luo Feng commanded everyone to locate Lin Tian immediately. However, someone countered that Sarah's teleportation had depleted her energy reserves, rendering further spells impossible. Furthermore, within the group, only Chang Jie possessed the ability to track an airborne, concealed target. But he was deceased. Luo Feng angrily questioned the team's usefulness. Sarah rose and urged Luo Feng to dismiss concerns about finding Lin Tian, explaining that he was under the influence of her dazzling array spell. With her mystical energy imbued upon him, she could locate him. She indicated that Lin Tian was unaware. He was still susceptible to pursuit in that manner. Conversely, Lin Tian believed he had to traverse the ravine, evading the throngs of creatures and the Goblin Tian Sentinels before accessing the Sylvan Domain. This was due to the gateway to the arboreal realm not being a tangible item, but a shrine concealed beneath the eucalyptus. This necessitated a considerable quantity of magical energy to access Linton. He then revealed that the organization hadn't located the altar's position, despite numerous endeavors. His strategy involved orchestrating a fatal conflict between Luo Feng and the goblins, forcing them to fight to the death. His aim was to capitalize on their demise and reach level 15 before leisurely searching for the key. He also remarked that he hadn't anticipated Luo Feng, who appeared unintelligent, to possess such shrewdness. Luo Feng cast a tracking enchantment on his teammates to distinguish their adversaries, which completely thwarted his scheme. Lien proceeded to clarify that, despite escaping by activating the flight ability, his objective of eliminating both factions remained unrealized. The Goblin Tyrian Sentinels would retreat to the eucalyptus tree, preventing him from discovering the altar. Here's the major revelation. While everyone presumed Sarah had discreetly placed a marker on Lin Tian realized that the mage had undoubtedly singled him out amidst the pandemonium. They had left a distinct mark on him. He might as well capitalize on this predicament. He contemplated that if Luo Feng deserted the mission and returned to headquarters to disclose his survival, he would face repercussions. Nevertheless, considering Luo Feng's personality, upon careful reflection, he wouldn't take that course of action as it would also jeopardize him. The perspective then transitioned to Luo Feng and his companions. Sarah, filled with anxiety, vocalized her bewilderment, remarking on the peculiar nature of the situation. Linden was clearly deceased. So how had he transformed into a monstrous being and been resurrected? The team members proposed abandoning their quest immediately and informing the company of Linden's location. They were undeniably outmatched. One member declared Linden a demonic entity and questioned his ulterior motives. They had barely escaped with their lives previously. Thus, he wished to avoid another confrontation with Lin Tian. All the while, Luo Feng contemplated, should he inform Lu Dao Long about the predicament? He recalled Lu Dao Long's declaration. Power was the fundamental principle of survival. It dictated the significance of one's being. To endure, one had to demonstrate their value to him. Unexpectedly, with this recollection, Lu Feng became agitated, exclaiming his inability to inform Lu Delong. Sarah noted Lin Tian's exceptional nature, highlighted by her enchantment. Alerting the authorities would enable his Jurijo. More crucially, they should permit Lin Tian's escape. Lu Feng then inquired of Sarah, reminding her that Lin was the architect of the entire framework. Therefore, Lin Tian possesses complete knowledge of the progression criteria and the competencies of every specialization. Nevertheless, a temporary alliance could be beneficial. They might be capable of overcoming Lin. Sarah reiterated that if Lin Tian had a chance to recuperate, locating him might prove impossible, even if they alerted Lu Delong. Lu Feng countered that should Lu Delong discover their inability to handle a level 12 beast, they'd be exiled from the jungle. Luo Feng also mentioned that Lin Tian was the architect behind the Hell Butterflies development. His objective was the Hell Butterflies themselves. They were merely caught in the fray. The Yulop Tree realm was his primary goal. Therefore, Lu Feng states, he believes another encounter with Lin Tian is inevitable once they locate the Yulop Tree altar. Simultaneously, both Luo Feng and Lin Tian resolved not to squander this chance, to annihilate them within the jungle. Several days elapsed, and Luofeng's team commenced placing crystals around the tree's perimeter to receive an alert when a foe approaches. In the following sequence, a member of Luofu's squad reported that the crystalline configuration in the northwest quadrant was arranged, and the formation nexus was established. Upon hearing this, Sarah conveyed that the final crystal node in the northwest sector was positioned. Consequently, they could now construct the shield. Subsequently, Sarah employed her abilities to erect a formidable barrier. Within moments, the entire eucalyptus was enveloped by it. Fatigued from deploying the barrier, Sarah notified everyone that the barrier formation was fully operational. Thus, even if Lin Tian possessed the power of flight and invisibility, escape from that zone was impossible. She further revealed that the mystical emanation from the mark on Lin's person was steadily diminishing. This signified that Lin Tian was becoming increasingly difficult to locate. Luo Feng retorted that it was merely a crossbow's final bolt, considering Lin's current capabilities. The possibility remained that Lin Tian would persist in causing disruption. Covertly, though, if Lin were discovered, he'd be trapped. Luo Feng stated their search perimeter was limited. Both Lin Tian and the Tree Realm's altar were within this zone. Should they locate Lin Tian again, escape would be utterly impossible. Perched on a nearby tree, Lin Tian sat contemplating. He felt the strain of days spent in guerrilla warfare. He'd been engaging those men in hit-and-run tactics for several days now. Yet, the altar remained elusive. He explained he was utilizing the fungi to map the creature's positions throughout the valley. Then, disguised as a human, he assaulted the monster encampment, instigating conflict between the beasts and Luo Feng's group. He'd employed this strategy repeatedly. However, once they were on guard, harming them became practically pointless. The spirit pet masters detected the goblin's activity. Within the Tian Brigade, the mage provides healing support, while the warrior archers clear the battlefield. It's safe to say they constituted a heavily fortified, valiant squad, practically unbeatable in the jungle. Lin Tian adds that, provided they avoided confronting the goblin general, they could completely eradicate the valley's monsters. After all, the maximum level of the jungle creatures wasn't particularly high. Furthermore, As they vanquished the goblins and jungle beasts, the mages deployed their magical arrays, restricting Lishan's possible hiding spots to the area surrounding the eucalyptus tree. Luckily for Lishan, his chosen hiding place was a spirit spine tree, possessing mystical properties that could conceal marking spells. Despite reaching level 13, Lin Tian was powerless against such a group. Frustrated, Lin Tian glanced at his fungal companion, questioning why it hadn't located the altar yet. With such vast territory to explore, and the mushroom clans, attunement to the earth, veins, spiritual energy, it shouldn't be unattainable. Abruptly, his fungal companion reacted joyfully. Observing this, Lin Tian inquisitively inquired if it had located it. The mushroom affirmed with a nod. Lin Tian enthusiastically declared it was time for the ultimate confrontation. Elsewhere, Sarah expressed delight, revealing she'd ascertained Lin's location. Hearing this, Luo Feng commanded everyone to move. The site was merely a short distance away, and Lin Tian must have discovered the realm's entrance. He vehemently urged everyone to follow, insisting that this time, Lin Tian's eradication was imperative, regardless of the circumstances. Meanwhile, on Lin's side, he journeyed towards the destination, pondering how he'd been detected amidst the chaos. This encounter would be the decisive battle. He accelerated, concealing his face. His aim was to throw the entire jungle into chaos. Meanwhile, Lin Tian requested the mushrooms to rally the jungle's complete monstrous inhabitants to generate a tempest as vast as the enclosure. As Luo Feng and their companions raced toward Lin's position, several creatures pursued them. While fleeing, Luo Feng urged Sarah to swiftly constrict the barrier formation and encircle Lin Tian beneath the eucalyptus. They had to eliminate him. Abruptly, the monsters attacked. Observing this, Luo Feng deduced that Lin Tian was again inciting the monsters. Consequently, Luo Feng directed the left and right flanks to fend off the creatures, while instructing the remaining squads to press onward. Sarah interjected, stating that Lin Tian seemed aware that escape was impossible, and had therefore agitated all the monsters. Hearing this, Lu Feng inquired if Lin Tian truly possessed the ability to command the creatures. Sarah countered that it was presumptuous to believe Lien could control the monsters, as more often than not, Lien relied on luring them into the creature's domain. The present circumstances suggest a toxic agent was employed to incite the creature's frenzy. She added that thus far, she believed he displayed nothing beyond standard human strategies. Furthermore, he was merely a level 12 creature, so there was no cause for alarm. Abruptly, a massive splash erupted nearby, leading Luo Feng to exclaim that the primary threat had arrived, as it undoubtedly represented Lin's ultimate weapon. Shortly thereafter, a colossal creature, the Overlord of Labyrinth Valley, General Goblin, materialized. Without hesitation, Luo Feng charged towards General Goblin, declaring he would obliterate the beast and discover how many more tricks Lin Tian possessed. His companions urged Sarah to assist Luo Feng, but she refuted the claim, stating it was unnecessary, since the monstrous adversary was no challenge for their commander. They had more critical foes to prioritize. Sarah informed them that Lin Tian was in close proximity, just ahead. She urged everyone to follow her and eliminate Lin. Deep down, however, Sarah also harbored thoughts of avenging Chung Ji's demise. Beside the eucalyptus, Lin Tian stood near the shrine and understood why his search had been fruitless. Despite his prolonged efforts, the eucalyptus served as concealment. Lin Tian then commenced chanting or reciting an incantation. Lin Tian expressed his gratitude for his knowledge of Sylvan glyphs. He was certain that, akin to the legendary tablet, a mystical altar existed at the threshold of the arboreal realm. Abruptly, his fungal companions grew solemn and signaled something. Observing this, Lin Tian deduced that Luo Feng and the others were in his vicinity. Lin Tian was assaulted with blazing bursts of fire. He narrowly evaded them, but landed within an enchanted zone. Lin Tian was about to speak, but was suddenly struck with admiration. He remarked that the simultaneous execution of offensive and ensnaring spells, deployed concurrently, was truly remarkable. He commended Sarah for her ingenuity. Sarah's allies verified that the snare had effectively entrapped their quarry. Sarah lauded their efforts and declared to Lin Tian that escape was impossible. Lin Tian retorted that the dual confinement spell, inhibiting his aerial movement and dexterity, was undeniably an effective tactic against him, but they should remain vigilant against his attempts to break free. Upon hearing this, Sarah became apprehensive, but reassured herself that fear was unnecessary, since Lin Tian was no longer a seasoned combatant, but merely a level 13 creature. She challenged Lin Tian to cease his bravado, as he had been utterly dominated. She pressed him to demonstrate his escape capabilities. Sarah then unleashed a magical assault upon Lin Tian. A fiery blast struck him. Observing this, she grinned. The perspective then shifted to Luo Feng, where he had somehow vanquished General Goblinshin and advanced to level 16. Luo Feng expressed disbelief at attaining level 16. Luo Feng contemplated waiting until he had amassed the ideal components for a profession change, but soon deduced that his current prowess sufficed to confront Lin. He proceeded toward the direction everyone had taken. En route, Luo Feng noticed his companion standing alone. Sarah was absent, so he inquired about her whereabouts. Unexpectedly, a sight shocked him. The scene returned to Lin, revealing him unscathed by Sarah's attack. Lin smirked, remarking on the inadequacy of her magic. It needs to be amplified. Even Sarah was astonished to find Lin Tian unharmed. He vehemently declared the magic altar was the gateway to the tree dimension, and Lin Tian was utilizing it to siphon their magical energy, to deflect assaults. Sarah retorted that Lin Tian was incredibly naive if he believed he could simply employ such tactics. To her astonishment, Lin Tian countered that it was far more complex. He intended to deplete their magical reserves entirely. Abruptly, a crystalline orb materialized out of thin air, leeching their power. Witnessing this, Sarah incredulously inquired of Lin Tian how he could wield magic without being a mage. Meanwhile, Lu Feng was utterly dumbfounded and bewildered as Sarah's barrier crumbled. Thus, they had no means of confining Lin. For a moment, Luo Feng felt apprehensive, questioning if Lin Tian would elude them once more. Just then, Lin Tian revealed there were 24 vocations for human combatants and 72 distinct paths to pursue. Following his career change, the capabilities of each vocation were determined by one's chosen profession. He adds that it was the scientific knowledge of that jungle, developed by Xinchuang Technologies, that was used to alter the jungle using the excavated stone tablet. As a human, he spearheaded that transformation process. The stone tablet enabled him to achieve the status of a fully qualified expert combatant. He informed Sarah that despite his current monstrous form, he could no longer execute warrior abilities. He requested Sarah to remember he was the architect of all the professions. By adjusting a few symbols within her established magical array, they could potentially utilize the altar to enhance their magical formation prowess. Sarah's staff clatters to the ground as she questions the feasibility of this, considering their diminished power. Lin Tian revealed his initial strategy was for them to eliminate one another, allowing him to gradually infiltrate. Following the harvest, however, their tenacity sparked a novel idea. Perhaps he could utilize them to unlock the arboreal realm. Fortunately, they were the initial pursuers. Had they arrived with Luo Feng, he would have been forced to enter the tree dimension first, and then devise a strategy to handle them within. Sarah vehemently cautions Lin Tian against recklessness, as neither the squad captain nor the corporation would permit his departure. Sarah's colleagues begin offering apologies, attributing the blame to Luo Feng, and asserting that the firm compelled their actions. They then implore Lin Tian for release, vowing to refrain from repeating such behavior. Lin Tian assures them of their safety, stating they needn't seek him out, as he would gradually locate them independently. The scene transitions to Luo Feng and the remaining squad members. While fleeing, Luo Feng declares the barrier's integrity inconsequential, even if it were to shatter, since Sarah and the others were sure to restrain Lin Tian. Given the mage team's capabilities, there wouldn't be any issues. Upon arrival, Luo Feng became silent. Observing this, the others inquired about his silence, concerned if something had befallen the mage leader. Sarah and Luo Feng were also stunned and couldn't process the situation. When the rest arrived, they were astonished to find Lin Tian standing there, greeting them as the final dish of the banquet. Everyone realized that the mage leader, Sarah, had been eliminated. They were incredulous that a level 12 creature had accomplished this. Linton smiled and urged them to calm down, guaranteeing everyone would receive their portion. Hearing this, everyone panicked and began yelling, attempting to flee. However, Lin Tian utilized his speed and agility to overtake them, annihilating them all with his fangs. To Lin's astonishment, he noticed Luo Feng assisting him in eliminating his own squad. So, Lin unexpectedly inquired about Lu Feng's actions, unleashing his fury upon his own allies. Lu Feng replied that he was acknowledging his underestimation of Lin Tian. Then, Lin Tian grinned and inquired about the current circumstances, challenging him, asking why Lu Feng wasn't retreating in disgrace. Luo Feng countered that the tree realm was accessible and devoid of obstacles to confine them. Therefore, fleeing might be a prudent choice for Lin. Upon hearing this, Lin Tian became enraged and warned Luo Feng against provoking him. He declared that his sole reason for remaining was to confront him. Lin Tian added that, after employing numerous plots and ruses throughout their journey, it was time for him to display his power. For strength was the paramount law of survival in the wilderness. With that, he charged towards Luo Feng, initiating the attack. When Lin Tian assaulted Luo Feng, he effortlessly deflected the blow. Observing this, Lin Tian recognized Luo Feng as a formidable opponent. Therefore, he couldn't allow Luo Feng to approach. To prevent this, Lin Tian utilized his agility for swift movement. However, Luo Feng mistook it for a cloaking technique. Suddenly, Luo Feng sensed someone approaching from behind. Upon turning around, he saw Lin Tian attempting a surprise attack. Yet, Luo Feng effortlessly repelled the assault with a swift counterattack. Stunned by the riposte, Lin Tian realized Luo Feng possessed exceptionally strong defenses. This was due to his upbringing, funded by the company's vast resources. At that moment, Lin Tian concluded that the only way to penetrate Luo Feng's defenses was through superior speed. He began circling Luo Feng rapidly, aiming to create a diversion or disorient him. However, Luo Feng remained composed, attentively observing Lin's every motion. He anticipated Lin's subsequent action. Luo Feng rapidly dashed towards that direction. He initiated his assault with his spear. He bellowed, challenging Lin Tian. "Is that all you've got?" The impact of the blow sent Lin Tian hurtling through the air, crashing into a rock. Unfazed, Luo Feng taunted, "Is that the best you can manage?" To Luo Feng's astonishment, a tiny fungus materialized before him. Gradually, fungi of all sizes converged and encircled Luo Feng, filling him with bewilderment. Without warning, the mushrooms unleashed their poisonous secretions upon Luo Feng. In mere seconds, he was completely coated in their viscous venom. In that instant, Lin Tian pondered if they had subdued Luo Feng with such simplicity. His uncertainty quickly vanished, however, as Luo Feng burst forth from the goo and launched a sword strike towards Lin Tian. Anticipating the maneuver, Lin Tian was ready and effortlessly evaded the assault. Lu Feng inquired if those tiny fungi were Lin Tian's secret weapon. It all suddenly clicked into place. It explained how he could monitor their positions and rally the creatures of the jungle. Those unassuming things were certainly hard to detect. He then struck Lin, stating that without precautions, after witnessing Cheng Ji's demise, he too might have been ensnared. Lin Tian grew apprehensive, questioning the efficacy of the mushroom assault. He began to flee to escape Luofu's onslaught. Luofu challenged Lin Tian, asking if he feared confrontation and intended to remain a fugitive. He then ridiculed Lin, declaring him not a true combatant, but a craven despite possessing such might. Whether in civilization or the wilderness, he existed as a timid buffoon. Upon hearing this, Lin Tian ceased his flight, hovering midair before Luo Feng. Capitalizing on the moment, Luo Feng launched a chain attack, aiming to ensnare Lin Tian. He vowed that Lin Tian would not elude him this time. Observing the approaching chain, Lin Tian braced himself, recognizing the targeted maneuver. Uncertain of his next move, he opted to advance, moving along the chain toward Luo Feng. With a desperate final effort, he managed to graze Luo Feng. On this occasion, Luo Feng mistakenly believed Lin Tian was charging towards him due to the chain. However, Lin Tian exploited this to mislead Luofu. Luofu was astonished by the unexpected blow. Lin Tian vacillated, believing he had finally penetrated Luofu's defenses. Upon hearing this, Luofu chuckled, questioning Lin Tian's pride, since despite his exertion, He had only inflicted a minor scratch. Suddenly, Luo Feng was taken aback, as he felt an internal assault on his body. Recognizing the symptoms of poisoning, Linton clarified that the jungle rewards, granted for eliminating Sarah and her companions, enabled him to trigger his ultimate ability, Venom. This toxin differed from the debilitating effects of the fungi, which merely hindered mobility and senses. Lin's poison was a deadly nerve agent. Even Luo Feng concurred with Lin, acknowledging the venom's destructive power. As a sudden wave of weakness washed over him, he deduced that this was Lin's final gambit to overcome it. Unexpectedly, to Lin's astonishment, Luo Feng lowered himself to the ground and initiated an action. Linton was bewildered, for he understood that Luo Feng was undertaking a class change. With apprehension, he inquired if Luo Feng had been granted permission for a profession alteration. Luo Feng confirmed, responding affirmatively. He elaborated that following Linton's departure from the guild, the limitation on job transitions had been revoked. Upon hearing this, Lintinian grew increasingly apprehensive. He realized the situation was unfavorable. He knew he had to prevent Luo Feng from changing his vocation. Despite Lin's abrupt response to this news, he couldn't stop Luo Feng's class transfer. Now Luo Feng was a formidable berserker. After finalizing the transition, Luo Feng chuckled, pondering the might of a berserker. He felt an overwhelming surge of power. Witnessing this, Lien also tensed up. He shared his observation that berserkers possess the capability to shed all detrimental effects upon entering their frenzied state. Furthermore, they can continuously amplify their combat spirit and offensive prowess, effectively transforming into relentless juggernauts. Lintinian questioned if he was truly outmatched by Luo Feng. He considered retreating, but as he contemplated this, Luo Feng startled him. He obstructed Lintinian's path, inquiring if he intended to flee. Lin Tian deduced that Luofu's initial action was to seal the entrance to the arboreal realm. This left him no alternative but to engage Luofu in a serious confrontation. Suddenly, Lin Tian perceived Luofu launching an assault in his direction. Tension surged through him as he realized Luofu possessed superior speed. This was a highly unfavorable situation. Luo Feng initiated an attack on Lin, yet Lin Tian resourcefully parried the blow and retreated. However, in the ensuing moment, Luo Feng vanished. Observing this, Lin Tian was astonished, questioning Luo Feng's whereabouts. Abruptly, Lin Tian detected Luo Feng's voice emanating from behind him. Luo Feng inquired why Lin Tian was searching elsewhere when he was present. As Lin Tian turned back, he was subjected to an attack from Luo Feng. Remarkably, he still managed to deflect Luo Feng's strike and thrust his fang into Luo Feng's abdomen. To his astonishment, Lin Tian questioned if such an injury, inflicted upon Luo Feng, had no effect on him whatsoever. He pondered if this was the might of a berserker. Lin Tian then conceded that he was no longer a match for Luo Feng. Voicing his apprehension about this situation, he deduced that the only way to combat a monster was to become one himself. Lin Tian resolved to surrender his body to the creature. The instant he made this choice, a peculiar transformation began. Even Luo Feng was momentarily startled. As Lin Tian's metamorphosis concluded, he was propelled backward, landing a significant distance away. Lin Tian had fully transmuted into a monstrous being. A tense Luo Feng inquired about the nature of this creature. Following this transformation, Lin Tian became immensely powerful. This left Luo Feng apprehensive, pondering Lianxin's hidden strengths. Their battle commenced. Progressively, Luo Feng amplified his rage through offense and defense. When Luo Feng's fury reached its apex, he lunged at Lin Tian with deadly intent. He roared, demanding Lianxin's demise. Lin Tian retaliated against Luo Feng with a fierce counterattack. Their combined assault resulted in a massive detonation within the jungle. Smoke rapidly enveloped the surrounding area. As the smoke dissipated, both Lin Tian and Lu Feng stood motionless, their backs turned towards one another. In that moment, Lu Feng commended Lin, recognizing him as truly exceptional. This acknowledgement deeply impressed him, but just as he spoke, Lu Feng collapsed lifeless. Lin Tian turned to witness this and also succumbed, falling to the ground. The scene abruptly transitioned to Xinchuang Technologies headquarters, where Lu Daolong inquired of an intern. "Is there still no communication from Luo Feng? What course of action should we take?" The intern offered an apology, stating that Luofeng hadn't replied to any Union transmissions. They had augmented the search party deployed in the jungle, but the equipment couldn't function sustainably in such a hostile environment. Suddenly, Luoyue appeared and urged Lu Daolong to refrain from pressuring the intern. The attorney then disclosed that they had located Lao Feng, but there was unfortunate news. Anxiously, Lu Daolong inquired about the unfavorable news. The scene transitioned back to the game, where Lin Tian grappled with his inner turmoil. To revert to his original state, he was unable to. Lin Tian pondered if his elevated level or the amplified strength of the creature's resolve was the cause. This escalation concerned Lin Tian, as it was an ominous sign. He deduced that he needed to access the arboreal realm, believing he might be able to remedy the predicament there. Nevertheless, Lin Tian struggled to maintain his form even across such a short span, barely progressing toward the tree realm. Unexpectedly, to his astonishment, Lin Tian received an alert announcing his quest completion and a subsequent reward of points. Elated, Lin Tian directed the interface to locate items that could alleviate psychological afflictions and procure them without delay. His quest uncovered a purifying elixir. The price for the potion was listed at 500 points. Unfortunately, Lin's current point total stood at 0. This amplified his anxiety. Abruptly, he recalled the store's exchange feature. Lin directed the store to gather the spoils of battle and convert them into jungle currency. Upon review, his display indicated 12 points available for redemption. Lin promptly authorized the transaction. Lin swiftly confirmed with an affirmative. He then instructed the screen to procure the potion. Following the exchange, a wave of melancholy washed over him. He realized Luofeng must have obtained numerous valuable artifacts and traded them all for points before he even had a chance to examine them. Just then, the acquisition was finalized. Lin obtained the elixir to revert to his true form. The setting then transitioned back to Shenzhen's Central Command. There, Lu Daolong unexpectedly inquired if Lin Tian had entered the tree domain. Lu replied, stating that the jungle's protective barrier had just displayed a tremendous surge of magical energy within the labyrinthine valley. This indicated the tree domain's opening. Lu Daolong questioned why Luofeng hadn't informed them beforehand. If he was attempting to subdue the eucalyptus tree, Luoyu opened a door and answered, suggesting it might be connected to the fabled stone tablet. The protective fields, energy emanating from the legendary stone slab, was intensifying, and stabilizing the gateway required considerable exertion. She added that it appeared the moment when the wilderness would engulf the planet was rapidly approaching. They remained unaware of Lin Tian's survival and his responsibility for the alterations. They all still believed Luofeng was accountable. Meanwhile, Lin Tian awaited them, prepared for retribution. Once they grasped the truth about the jungle's actual events,